Hello and welcome back to our channel. I am Willy and today we're going to look at trendline. What are they, what do they do, and how to identify a trend to draw a trend line. So sit back, get your pen and paper ready, let's dive in with Willy. Now, in order for us to understand how to draw a trend line, we need to first understand the fundamentals of a trend. So the basics of a trend is that we need to see if the price of the asset itself is actually going upwards, going downwards, or moving in a close range or a tight range whereby we categorize as sideways. So after we understand this part, then we will take this fundamental and apply it onto our graph itself, and then we will start drawing trend line from there. However, there are several rules in drawing trend line later on, which I will touch on. So for now, we're going to look into uptrend. So uptrend basically means that the pair itself or the price of the asset itself is moving upwards. Now, normally when I say this, maybe some of you might think that the price of the asset will move in this kind of fashion, which is straight line. Now, this is not necessarily so because most of the price itself move in a zigzag. But when they move in a zigzag, they are actually ascending order for uptrend itself. Now, in order to categorize an uptrend, we need to always remember this. An uptrend means that it will have higher lows and higher highs. So what do I mean by that? So as you recall, I said that the price itself in a zigzag, but in an ascending order. So when they move like that, we can actually see that the latest high that they have, which is before they turn downwards, which is called the latest high will always be higher than the previous high, as you can see here. Whereas for their lows, before they swing upwards, is known as lows. Their lows will always be higher than the previous low itself. So always refer to the latest high and lows and compare to see whether it is actually higher than the previous high and lows or not. So if it is higher than the previous high and lows, we can actually categorize the price itself as an uptrend. So here's one good example which I actually saw earlier this morning. So basically, we know that this asset itself is actually moving in an uptrend. But why can we categorize so is because when you see its highs and lows, which is over here, the latest one, which is over here, the latest highs and lows would always be higher than the previous one. And the previous first one will always be higher than the previous second one, and so on. So this is one example of an uptrend in real life. Now, aside from uptrend or opposite of uptrend, we are going to look at downtrend. Same thing will happen in terms of downtrend because when a price or the asset moving downwards, we don't actually expect them to plunge just like this, which is a straight line downwards. We'll still expect them to move zigzag, but in a declining order. So as you can see here, this is how downtrend will look like when they zigzag in a declining order. And one main thing to note about downtrend is that they always have a lower highs and lower lows. So as you can see here, the previous I would say the previous highs or the previous low will actually be higher than the latest one. So when you refer to the latest one, it needs to be lower than the previous one. So as you can see here, when we refer in another way, the latest high will always be lower than the previous high, and the latest low will always be lower than the previous low. So this is how we actually categorize the pair itself or the price itself as a downtrend. So in terms of real life application, this is one good example. Although we can categorize this as a downtrend, but why do I actually say it is actually in the downtrend is because when you look into the highs and lows in each period, it is actually significantly lower than the previous one. So let's start from here. these few parts here. So you can see here, this is the high. But when we compare this high with previous high, it is actually lower than before. And when we compare the lows, the latest lows over here, it is actually significantly lower than the previous low over here, and so on as it goes along. So this is a downtrend in real life application. Now, last but not least, in terms of trends, is sideways. So what do we mean by sideways is that we expect the pair or the price itself to move in a small range of pricing. So we will expect it to zigzag within certain price for a certain period of time. So by this means is that we need to remember for sideways, we are actually expecting them to move with similar highs or similar lows or both. So they will actually have almost the same pricing for their highs and almost the same pricing for their lows. But this is just a theoretical aspect because this is not necessarily would occur as such due to how the market works. So let's take a good example in terms of the real market application here. So here in this region itself, let me mark this here real quick. In this region itself, we actually categorize this as a sideways. But why do I categorize as such? Because when we identify it, you can actually see the lows that it has are almost similar in pricing or levels, whereas the highs is also as such. So this is what we call a sideways trend for the price or for the asset itself. Now, this is the last part of the video whereby we explain about trend line and how do we draw one. So trend line actually is a line to identify the trend of the asset or the price itself. And it is actually drawn to help identify opportunities that may occur when a breakout happens. So how do we actually draw this trend line? Is that at first we need to identify its trend. The second thing is that we need to identify its lows if the whole trend itself is actually an uptrend, or we have to identify the highs if the whole trend itself is actually going in a downtrend. And then after that, we need to draw a straight line, slanting of course, to identify the trend itself or to emphasize the trend at all the lows or the highs. And then last but not least, the most important thing is that in order to draw a trend line, you need to connect at least 2 or more points. The more points that you can connect, the better. Now, first off, into application. So right here, we can see this CME mini actually has an uptrend. But how do we actually draw it? So in terms of uptrend, we need to draw below the price itself. And as you remember, we have to draw at the lows for the uptrends, whereas for downtrend, we need to draw at the highs. So for an uptrend, we would need to draw the lows itself, whereby we need to connect all the lows with one single line. So let's take out our line tool here, and then we can start drawing. So first off, we can pull it as such, and then we're going to let go. And then after that, we can adjust a bit in order to make it more clear or pretty so that it can be presentable. So here we go. This is an uptrend. So in terms of an uptrend, when you draw, you need to connect at least 2 points or above. So as you can see here, I connected 1, 2, 3, sort of 4th point, and then the 5th point here. So this is a very good uptrend, as you can see from this asset itself. So in terms of this pricing so far, there are certain times whereby the candle itself might, went overboard. This is fine. But so long you can connect perfectly fine on all the points itself, it is more than good enough. So in terms of trading opportunity here, what traders actually wait when they draw trend line is breakouts such as this. So as you can see here, it has just broken out from this part here. So whenever a trend line is being broken, we will expect it to go the other way around. So when someone actually saw this, they might put a sell right here. So when they hold it for a short period of time after that, they might get profit at around 759 pips thereafter. So in terms of this is one way to draw a trend line in terms of real life application. But always remember to always draw a trend line according to the points that is being shown on the graph itself, and it needs to be 2 points and above. Let's say, for example, if you draw a trend line with just only, I don't know, 1 point that looks like this is not a trend line. Trend line is a line itself that can actually be connected to more points as it touches every single time. So this is how we actually draw a trend line for an uptrend. Now, next up, we're going to look into how to draw a trend line for a downtrend. So as you can see here, this is actually going at a downward fashion. So previously, uptrend, we are going to draw the trend line at the lows. But as for downtrend, we're going to draw the downtrend line itself from the highs. So how do we draw this is that let's pick out our line tool, and then we're going to start connecting the points as much as we can, as you can see here. So this is how we actually draw a trend line. So although the whole trend line itself, as you can see, it is not actually that perfect because the trend line could not touch all the other points right here, which is fine. But so long you can touch 2 or more points from one go itself, it is more than enough for you to determine that this is actually a downtrend. So in terms of here, as you can see so far, it is a perfect downtrend, and then after that, it broke one of the support levels and slumped even further downwards thereafter. So this is how you can draw a trend line or a trend that is actually going downwards. And that's all for today's video on how to identify a trend and draw a trend line. If you want to know more about Forex, do subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos just like this.